Welcome to another edition of the Magic Latest Podcast, the podcast where we discuss everything Orlando Magic basketball. I'm your host, Jalon Dixon, and today we're going to get into the Orlando Magic's recent loss against the San Antonio Spurs. But before we get into that, remember to like, comment, and subscribe for daily Orlando Magic content. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers and trying to become one of the biggest Orlando Magic podcasts here on the YouTube platform. So remember to hit that post notification bell so you always know when we're dropping new videos. And let's get right into it, man. The Orlando Magic had this game in the bag. And by that, I mean every statistical output you could look at that would favor the Orlando Magic, normally with the kind of play style that they tend to lean on this season, favored them across the board. Points off of turnovers, 23 points for the Orlando Magic, 13 for the Spurs. Second chance points, 11 for the Orlando Magic, 7 for the Spurs. Points in the paint, which I talked about in the preview about needing to test the mettle of Luke Kornet. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later because that ended up being one of the most important sequences of this game. But 64 points in the paint for a team that averages 60 points in the paint, by the way. And I mentioned this in the preview. 64 points in the paint for the Magic, 42 points in the paint for the Spurs. Even turnovers. They turned the ball over 9 less times. They had 11 steals, 27 assists, and they won the rebounding battle 62-56. But here's the thing. I'm not going to point to the three ball because the Spurs were 13 of 38 for 34%. Orlando was 33%, 9 of 27. So as far as efficiency is concerned, yes, San Antonio hit a few more, but as far as efficiency is concerned, this was dead even. Quite dead even to the point that for this game, field goal percentage for the Spurs, 46%. Field goal percentage for the Magic, 46%. What was the equalizer? And not by much, but something that's been an issue for the Orlando Magic all season long. Yeah, the Spurs were 17 of 24 from the free throw line, 71%. But the Magic were 13 of 19. And I've said this plenty of times. If the Orlando Magic are going to drop free throws, it will cost them games. It will cost them games. And this is one of those where fan favorite of the podcast, Jonathan Isaac, had 2 big blunders that really hurt in this game. One, Jonathan Isaac missed 2 free throws in this game. And I'm not going to overblow that because of when they came, because I don't think that's an important enough sequence overall, but he missed 2 free throws. But more importantly, he is the one who fouled late in the game that led to this essentially De'Aaron Fox putting them up and eventually winning this game. Jonathan Isaac with 1.4 seconds left had one of the biggest blunders of the game. And then again, I mentioned in the pre-show and in the preview for this game, and I mentioned at the top of this show, the Franz Wagner versus Luke Kornet final possession. You tested Luke Kornet's mettle all night. And it worked out, for the most part, in your favor. But on that last possession when it mattered most, Luke Kornet came up with the game-saving block. And sometimes it's just that simple. This was a game where I just read all the stats out to you. This was a game that the Orlando Magic essentially had full control of. But 2 things happened. One, De'Aaron Fox scored the final 10 points of this game for the San Antonio Spurs to close this thing out. And number 2, Luke Kornet showed up in the biggest moment of the game and came out on top. Those are the 2 things that were the separator in this game. Was the final 2 or 3 minutes of this game, as far as De'Aaron Fox is concerned, and the very last defensive possession by the San Antonio Spurs. A couple of notable stats for both teams. De'Aaron Fox finished with a game high 31 points along with 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and got to the free throw line 9 times. Harrison Barnes, who I highlighted a lot on the preview, only finished with 11 points, 4 of 12 from the field, but did take 6 threes. I told you guys that he would be a threat as somebody that even if he doesn't hit a high percentage, would at least be somebody you had to be wary of as trying to stretch the floor. Had a couple of guys attempt at least 7 threes in this game, including De'Aaron Fox and Devin Vassell, who had 15 points and 6 rebounds. Off the bench, Keldon Johnson and Dylan Harper Keldon Johnson and Dylan Harper combined for 29 points and 9 rebounds, along with 6 assists between the two of them. For the Orlando Magic, 25 points from Franz Wagner. Model of consistency, as we've said a million times and then some. 4 rebounds, 6 assists. Jalen Suggs, 24 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists before fouling out in 27 minutes. He had also had 3 steals in this game. And the foul out was late enough in the game where I think you could make the argument that it wasn't going to change life, right? The final 30 seconds of the game in terms of fouling out, I wouldn't say it necessarily would change life, but at the end of the day, you did lose one of your potential offensive options down the stretch for that final possession. You did also lose a point of attack defender in that final stretch of the game, which could have been very useful. For example, in that one-on-one situation against De'Aaron Fox, where Jonathan Isaac ended up committing the foul in that situation. If you have Jalen Suggs on the floor, does that possession go differently? That's a question to ask. But that leads me to something that I want to talk about that I feel like I've kind of beat the drum on this podcast pretty continuously, but I think it's just something that with a game like this, I want to continue to highlight. And I'm going to be very thorough about this. The Orlando Magic are not better without Paolo Banchero. I don't care what anybody says, and this might be one of the shortest segments we have on the podcast, but no matter what anybody tries to tell you, as an isolation scorer and somebody with the physicality to get to the rim and get to the free throw line as much as he does, this team is not better without Paolo Banchero. Have they shown signs of good play that means that when he comes back, there's another level they can go to? Yes, but are they a better team without Paolo Banchero? That's foolish. And let me tell you why. The reason why is games like this one down the stretch when you need somebody to be able to go tit for tat with someone like a De'Aaron Fox down the stretch. I'm going to go down to the fourth quarter. And I want to read essentially the shot chart for the Orlando Magic in this fourth quarter. And I'm going to specifically focus on the final 5 minutes of this game. So peep this. This is the shot chart starting at the 5:08 mark for the Orlando Magic. Desmond Bane misses 2-point driving layup. Franz Wagner misses 2-point driving layup. Goga Batadze makes 2-point driving reverse layup. Jace Richardson misses 2-point driving layup, then makes a tipping layup back off the offensive rebound. Desmond Bane makes 2-point driving layup. Desmond Bane makes 3-point pull-up jump shot. Goga Batadze makes a running dunk from Jalen Suggs. Franz Wagner makes a 3-point pull-up shot. And that's around the 104 mark. Okay? So it's kind of going all over the place. But then there's the 17-second mark where Desmond Bane misses the 2-point driving layup. This is where I think the difference can be made. Those final 30 seconds is actually when the game should have really came together around a guy like Paolo Banchero. The ability to play through somebody in that late game situation like that, and don't get me wrong, I just mentioned a handful of possessions where Desmond Bane and Franz Wagner were able to put the ball in the basket and kind of keep things afloat as they tried to, fight back into this thing. But the 17-second mark and the final possession by the Orlando Magic, those are two where you want to get the ball in the hands of the best player you can around the basket, more specifically. Again, testing the mettle of Luke Cornett. I think the possession between Franz and Luke Cornett, coming off of what essentially was, a Magic offensive rebound, I think that this is a situation where if you have someone like Apollo Banchero to play through, I think you just trust him in a much different capacity. And I understand most will say, Jay, there was barely any time left on the clock. I think that's exactly why a physical big body like Paulo Banchero is so dangerous in that situation. There's so much contact that's going to come with that. There's so much variance that's going to come with the fact that he's so much stronger of a finisher around the rim than Franz Wagner. I don't want to overblow one possession. I don't even want to overblow this overall offensive output by this team because they scored nearly 30 in every quarter except the second one, which is probably the most difficult quarter for them in this game. But the ability to close these games out, I think, is the part where having Paulo Banchero is so important. Because, excuse me, especially when it comes to getting to the line, when it comes to getting to the paint, when it comes to mucking up the game and playing this physical brand of basketball, especially in the closing portions of the game like this, having someone like him, even from a presence perspective, shifts that possession. Because now, off the offensive rebound scenario like that, right? Let's say that Paulo Banchero is in the game. Luke Cornett has to respect Paulo Banchero's finishing ability around the rim in that situation so much that maybe Franz gets a more significant look at the basket in that situation. That Desmond Bane shot that led to the eventual, De'Aaron Fox and them taking the lead. What if in that scenario you have one more 20-point per game score available that now commands a certain level of attention that makes that possession a lot smoother to find a better look? And this goes back to something I said last podcast, which is that this Orlando Magic team finds themselves winning on offense through playing a very difficult and ugly looking brand of basketball. I'm not saying they have to be, the Tim Duncan led San Antonio Spurs as far as ball movement and things of that nature, but I'm saying that this is a team that I think has not fully realized how impactful the talent around them is in terms of being able to create mismatch situations when moving the ball around. And having a guy like Paulo Banchero that you now have to respect in the middle as a part of that offense is something that separates them even further once they get that ball movement implemented. Because now it's pick your poison. It's not dump the ball down to Paulo, wait till he gets double teamed and then make a decision. Now you have to, with those guys moving off ball actions, double screen offsets and freeing up guys like Anthony Black and Desmond Bane as shooters, Anthony Black and Jalen Suggs as shooters, right? You put yourself in a position to get so many more looks by just having, again, at worst, a decoy in the form of a 20-plus point per game scorer. So I don't want to hear this whole thing about Paulo Banchero and this Orlando Magic team being better without him. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm not saying that this game is a staple for why there's proof of concept, but there's games like these where down the stretch of this game, that last 30 seconds or so, that's where having that presence, especially offensively, I think that's where having that presence goes a long way. And I think you pair that again with, I think, losing Jalen Suggs in the final 30 seconds of this game, I think also really impacted that last possession or two, specifically the one again with Jonathan Isaac fouling, where I think if you have a point of attack defender like Jalen Suggs at the helm of that, maybe things go differently. Now again, De'Aaron did score the last 10 points for the San Antonio Spurs, so Jalen Suggs was getting some of that heat too, but would you rather have Jalen Suggs, your best point of attack defender, on De'Aaron in space like that, or would you rather be caught in a scenario where your last line of defense is Jonathan Isaac as a rim protector in a situation where a foul could cost you the game? A shooting foul, more particularly, can cost you the game. It really depends. You guys let me know in the comment section down below how you guys feel about all of that. And I know some of that was a little bit of like a ramble, but at the same time, I really feel like the narrative around some of this stuff with the Orlando Magic is getting completely out of hand. Next up, Chris Paul. I'm literally asking for vibes. This is going to be a 2-minute segment. I am at the 15-minute mark. Look, this is going to be a 2-minute segment. I'm literally asking for vibes. Chris Paul got released from the LA Clippers in the most disrespectful manner ever at 3 a.m. in the morning. A grown man, 3 a.m. in the morning, 40 years old, mind you. Probably woke up cranky looking at his phone, figuring this whole thing out. In the middle of a road trip, mind you, where they're at Atlanta on the East Coast, they release him. And here on this podcast, we've, of course, discussed in a multitude of different ways how this team could really improve from having a ball-moving point guard. And we know what Chris Paul has been able to do in the future with younger basketball teams, both as a mentor figure and as a presence on the floor, even at a lower capacity, a la the Phoenix Suns, a la the Oklahoma City Thunder, right? Could Chris Paul be a good fit for this Orlando Magic team at the point guard position to kind of help with both igniting a further fire in the locker room for this youthful team, who he tends to actually do much better with younger talent than you would think for the grumpy man Chris Paul that he's always kind of pointed out to be. But on top of that, he gives you another guy who can be a high Q ball mover, big time facilitator, and someone that I don't think you have to play heavy minutes in order to see him contribute. I think he can essentially do a lot of the things that you ask someone like Tyus Jones to do, but maybe do it with a little bit more impact, while also having, even at 40 years old, at least a little bit more defensive upside than Tyus Jones, unfortunately, right? So just for vibes, I'm asking you strictly for vibes, yes or no in the comment section down below. Would Chris Paul be an interesting fit? I don't even think he's going to sign onto a team after what just happened. Personally, I think we may have actually just seen the last of Chris Paul without knowing that we saw the last of Chris Paul. But just for vibes, how do we feel about Chris Paul in an Orlando Magic jersey? Just for vibes, just asking, just want to hear what you guys have to say. Last but not least, let's go ahead and go to the comment section, man. Let's go ahead and go to the comment section from last video. Shout out to you guys as usual. We're going to start from the bottom this time because we started from the top last time. Ed8RG, shout out to you, boss, says Banchero rest and rehab till Charlotte. I told you guys I asked you guys about how the Orlando Magic should go about handling the Paolo Banchero injury situation as far as bringing him back gradually. And I mentioned that there's two ways you can go about this. You can either try to get him ramped up in time to be ready for Sunday's game against the New York Knicks, so he gets a game under his belt before returning back home to play in the NBA Cup game against the Miami Heat. Or after that NBA Cup game, they are on a 4-game road trip before returning back home to play in the Charlotte Hornets game. I said that if he doesn't play in the game against the Miami Heat, he likely will not play again until after Christmas against Charlotte. So it sounds like we're kind of leaning towards waiting until the Charlotte game. Totally not against that, by the way. Joe Pinovert 7776. Players don't check themselves in and out of games. J.I. doesn't play because coach doesn't play him. What did TDS do in the last couple of games? Nothing, but still got the minutes. How could anyone get in any kind of rhythm without consistent minutes? Underneath of that, Darsum88 said J.I. has had plenty of opportunity to perform, and outside of defense, he has shown next to nothing. Is TDS a good is good? Is TDS as good on defense? No, but he's not a bum either. And when he is on, he is much better offense. He is a much better offensive threat than Ji. TDS should be getting all the minutes. We can let him continue to grow. I think the other thing is there's a misconception around comparing those two players because TDS is essentially he's essentially making up for not having Paulo Banchero. And in that sense, especially in the starting lineup. And the question you have to ask yourself is, do you want another potential floor spacer next to Franz Wagner and Desmond Bane, or do you want another rim protector next to Wendell Carter Jr.? Given the lack of offensive productivity that Jonathan Isaac has shown, not even just this year, but over the last few years, why would I put a net negative offensive player in a lineup that already does not have a lot of dynamic shooting around it outside of really Jalen Suggs and Desmond Bane on a consistent basis? And then Franz Wagner, at least from a percentage perspective, adds a little bit. But why would I not add another floor spacer and another potential point of attack defender, even if he has been so-so as a defensive player in TDS? Why wouldn't I prioritize another ball handler who provides floor spacing over adding another rim protector next to Wendell Carter Jr.? Me personally, I wouldn't do that. I don't think that makes a lot of sense, and I don't know if it really benefits the Magic overall. That's why you go with TDS. You have to factor in where TDS is filling in, not just simply their productivity on the floor, because TDS's value on this team positionally, again, the lack of depth at the small forward, power forward position makes TDS's spot that much more important. Hence why he's still getting the significant minutes, even with the fact that he has not played as well the last few games as he did when he first started the season. Bernini fan, I think this is the first time I've seen your name, so shout out to you. Hello. The Magic struggle to move the ball because no other team respects their three-point shooting. Facts. So they cheat and clog passing lanes or double team the ball handler. I agree they need a facilitator creator who can provide easy shot opportunities, but they need to be at least respectable from three to keep the opposing defense honest. Facts. I also think that part of being able to create those three-point shots is the ball movement, though. That's where you have to kind of factor those things in. Part of having to respect you from beyond the arc is first generating more three-point opportunities to then see the volume that now warrants maybe needing more contests, right? Again, this Orlando Magic team is bottom 8 in three-point attempts with only about 30 a game. So part of the reason why the ball isn't moving is because part of the reason why the ball isn't moving being the passing element is also because they don't put pressure on defenses to force them to have to rotate, right? If you don't have to contest their threes and you're not moving the ball enough to force them to need to rotate to maybe potentially force a closeout, as a defense, all I have to do is sit and lie and wait. I don't have to respect you as a three-point shooter because your passing is not making me feel as though you're a threat, and your actual three-point shooting percentage as a team doesn't make me feel like you're a threat. So I think both of those things go hand in hand. But I totally agree with you that clogging the paint and cheating on defense as far as not necessarily feeling the need to contest or press up, go over the screen against the Magic is something that is really hurting their offense because it could open up a whole nother element for them. Eagle 8, another person that I think I haven't seen comment in here before, says homie Josh Minot is the dog type of player the Magic need at the 3. At the 3? Eastern Conference Finals for sure. At the 3 is that's kind of heavy. He's definitely a center. Unless you're looking at Josh Minot the way like Orlando Magic fans once upon a time viewed Bol. And I think there's some talent there. But first of all, I think he's definitely a 5. Small ball 4 at the worst. But I think he's definitely a 5, number 1. But number 2, I don't think the Celtics are going to give up Josh Minot with what he's been able to bring to their team this year. And like their center rotation desperately kind of needs a guy like Josh Minot in it. So like I don't see a universe where that works. Jance01, shout out to you as always, says it looks like Giannis is on the trade block. Would you trade Paolo for him? No, because you don't know if he's gonna stay, and you don't know if you just gave Paolo a supermax extension, which I think actually would make him ineligible to be traded this season anyway. But even if Paolo Banchero were trade eligible this season, you have a guarantee because his contract doesn't kick in until next year. You have a guaranteed 5 seasons with Paolo. With Giannis, you have 2 before he can become an unrestricted free agent. You have, and really not even a full 2. You have the rest of this season, and you have next season, and then he can become an unrestricted free agent. And if he didn't pick you, he might not stay. So that means he can walk, and you have Paolo Banchero in Milwaukee for basically the next 3 years after that. That's tough. Also, you didn't know this as of when you dropped a comment for this, but Giannis is currently down with an injury that Doc Rivers says is not an Achilles, which is a good sign. But nonetheless, there's a chance that Giannis Antetokounmpo could miss more time after already missing time earlier this season due to injury. Remember, this is a guy who now is on the opposite side of 30 and has a play style that's predicated on his athleticism. Keep that in mind. Elite level player, MVP caliber player when healthy. Starting to rack up the injuries a little bit. Just something to keep in mind. DJ Hafta, I'm a longtime Magic fan from the UK. I asked this the other week about Banchero playing center. I don't understand the positions that well, but like in football, is there a world where Banchero can either play center, or is there a formation where when fit Magic can play with Bane, Suggs, Wagner, and either Black or TDS, and Banchero will leave Wendell and go on the bench? Shout out to you. I've said this on the podcast a million times. I've said that's the lineup that I want to see. You're absolutely right. And it's a lineup I would like to see when he comes back healthy, because there's so much athleticism that can come out of that for a team that is trying to play more up-tempo. A lineup that has Jalen Suggs at the 1, Desmond Bane at the 2, Anthony Black at the 3, because 6'7", duh. You'd probably put TDS at the 4. You can interchange those. I think actually having Anthony Black guard small ball 4 situation would maybe be more advantageous, because I think he's just a little stronger right now. So maybe let's say no. It would be, almost forgot about a superstar for a second. The 5 would be Jalen Suggs at the 1, Desmond Bane at the 2, Anthony Black at the 3, because 6'7", Franz Wagner at the 4, Paolo Banchero at the 5. I think that could be nuts. Now, your rim protection goes to the gutter. Facts. Go to the gutter. Facts. But your perimeter ball handling on offense goes up significantly. You now have all high-level dribble, pass, shoot individuals on the floor, like across the board, all 5. And defensively, you now have 4 point-of-attack defenders that can kind of play a little reckless. Because you have to, in a sense, by having Paolo Banchero as your rim protector, you have to, by proxy, be a little bit more aggressive on the perimeter to hold up in man-to-man situations. So that creates that dynamic as well. So I completely agree with you. I've said this for weeks that I think that when Paolo Banchero gets back healthy, this is a lineup that I want to see a little bit more frequently. We got a couple more. You guys were kind of active, so I'll kind of speed through these. Eddie Fernandez, 111, says it would be foolish to expect Paolo to be aggressive and score lots of points in the next weeks. He could come in and be an elite player by helping with assists and easy baskets. Don't hate the idea of him being a decoy and a facilitator. I've said that already early in the podcast. Let him gain his confidence to shooting the basket. Working with the floor chemistry that exists now and after Christmas holidays, he could take off. Elite players, LeBron, Kobe, etc., did this after the injuries return. I mean, totally fair. I think that, whatever version of a slow ramp up you can do for Apollo, you do. I think at the end of the day, if you can get away with holding him until after Christmas, that's actually a safe bet. You just don't want this to get out of hand. That's the main thing. You just don't want this to get out of hand. And I don't think one loss should make you worry about needing to rush him back. But also at the same time, like you don't want Paulo away for too long. Double A, as usual, constant and consistent commenter in the comment section, says completely agree with the ball movement sucking. It was on display against the Bulls where the game plan was to give the ball to Franz. Franz goes for a layup. The second half, Franz wasn't getting anything, and they switched up to Bane. Same game plan. Yep. Your turn, my turn. This is what we've always done with Paulo. That's where we miss players like Mo and even Jingles, who were great at running pick and roll / pick and pop with other players not named Paulo. Franz especially thrived in that kind of play as a cutter. De Silva is also good at cutting. I rarely see it from anyone else. The biggest thing we need is getting open looks for Bane and other players. When Franz is driving, he doesn't take the time to look at where his teammates are in case he needs to kick out. Very much bull in China shop. I can't even blame you on that one. And just commits to make or miss drive. Paulo is similar to this, but will pass if he's cut off, but usually too late. That's one thing I love about Jets. About Jets game is he does look for his teammates and anticipates where they are. It's not being taught. It's frustrating the more about the offense, one dimensional. I mean, it is very one dimensional, but I think at the same time they're also just trying to figure out how things are working around them as far as like really starting to catch their momentum. And the biggest thing too, right, is at the end of the day, as it was mentioned in one of the earlier comments, like the ball movement is predicated off of also being a threat as drivers, backdoor cutters, and ball movers. If you're not a threat as a three-point shooter, moving the ball and forcing the defense to rotate becomes much more difficult. If you're not putting pressure on the rim, which is why I preach on this podcast so much that I think that the Orlando Magic are the most dangerous when they get paint touches. If you're not doing that, that's another element that significantly hurts you. And more than all of that, if your stars have glue in their hands and the ball is stuck and it doesn't move, the rest will just stand and watch, which also creates another opportunity to be able to collapse allows the defense to collapse. And that's where you see things like what you mentioned with Paulo Banchero making last second decisions that feel more like a bailout. Karen Kidler says we must remember that Paulo was like this when he came back from his major injury. He was horrible. If you don't believe me, watch the tape. When he comes back healthy this time, he can't come back as the big star, but as a guy who is going to be rusty and has to learn how to play in our newfound game without him. Let's not be worried about how many points he'll get or that he should be the star of when he first gets back. He will naturally see his openings and the teammates will want to include him, but everyone has to be looking good for the best shot. If he doesn't come out guns blazing, he will get into his normal form, which is fantastic. As long as he doesn't do too much dribbling because the opposing teams know he can still swipe the ball from him and is key. Paulo also came back to a team without Franz, Suggs, Mo, and concussed Goga. This time is different, hopefully for the best. All factual across the board on both sides. I think the main thing that should be stated too is that I think Paulo Banchero's facilitation upside makes it where he can slowly but surely be ramped up that way. I think the other thing is too that his physicality as being able to get to the free throw line is so much more important in terms of coming back from an injury. Like his ability to slow the game down by playing more physically actually helps him as opposed to hurts him, because getting to the free throw line also kind of helps bring him back into the fray without overdoing it. That's going to be the biggest thing for him. Luis Rosario, repeat commenter as usual, says my contention is not if we play well without P5. I need him completely healthy with no minute limitations and ready to take his place on this team. Focus on this team winning games and not going deep into the playoffs. Facts. You don't rush him back. You don't rush him back at all. D'Lo Florida had two things. He said, you're spot on about Harrison Barnes. He's a consistent factor for the Spurs. They can't sleep on him. Had a rough night last night, but I mean, still a guy that dropped like 31 the game right before. And he also said, one thing I dislike about P5 situation is, like you pointed out, even with him off the floor, the ball is not moving as much. There you go. The ball's not moving as much as it should. The way the season started was never a Banchero issue. I always looked at it as a team issue considering everything was so new. The improvement started right before he got injured. I sincerely believe they would still be trending up if he never went down. I understand it's easy to say otherwise, especially when the topic is a hot take for the media, but bro was the constant. His rebounds was going up along with decent assists. I think averaging 4 to 5, his game was expanding, and I still think he will come back. And last but not least, Peace and holiday, happy holidays. I think a minute restriction approach is best on two fronts. Paulo has to get back into playing shape. It helps him ease into the current play style. I'm not opposed to having him come back off the bench. Totally agree with that one. The main thing is to get Paulo healthy. It doesn't matter in what capacity. It doesn't matter in what capacity whatsoever. If Paulo Banchero is not healthy, it doesn't matter, right? Because at the end of the day, a postseason run is not going to be made without Paulo Banchero healthy on this roster. So that's the biggest thing and the most important thing. I'm interested to continue to hear what you guys have to say about the Paulo Banchero dynamic and how you guys feel about this team moving forward as they go into the NBA Cup quarterfinals. So drop your comments in the comment section down below. With that being said, this has been another edition of the Magic Latest Podcast. Again, remember to like, comment, and subscribe for daily Orlando Magic content. Hit that post notification bell so you always know when we're dropping new videos. And I'll see you next time. Peace.